them rolling into the room. If you're joining us now, welcome to session 17 of the Academia 2063 Ukraine Crisis webinar series, where we discuss the research findings from Academia 2063's Ukraine Crisis brief series on the socioeconomic impacts of the Russia-Ukraine war on African economies. My name is Layi Butake, and I'm the Director of Communication and Outreach for Academia 2063, and it's always a delight and an honor to welcome you to these sessions. Heads up, for those who haven't visited our Ukraine Crisis portal yet, we have 30 Ukraine briefs published to date. So if you haven't been there yet, please visit academia2063.org and read and download as you see fit. So today for this session 17, we will discuss trade and market disruptions, impact on growth, food security, and poverty in Rwanda. Trade and market disruptions, impact on growth, food security, and poverty in Rwanda. And as always, we are looking forward to a highly interactive and engaging session with you. Please head to the chat, tell us your name, tell us the organization you represent, tell us where you're joining from. I am connecting from Dakar, Senegal. So today, as usual, we are providing simultaneous interpretation in English and French. If you need interpretation, please click the globe icon on your screen and choose the language of your choice. If you have any questions, contributions, or reflections that you wish to be brought to the floor during this conversation, please head to Q&A at the bottom of your screen, head to Q&A at the bottom of your screen and drop your comments there. And as usual, we invite you to raise your hand during the Q&A segment and the moderator will invite you to the floor. Now, without further ado, please permit me welcome our moderator for today's session. He is the CEO of the National Agricultural Export Development Board of Rwanda. Please welcome Mr. Claude Bizimana.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Layi Butake. And ladies and gentlemen, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending where you're connecting from. And warm welcome to this Ukraine Crisis webinar series dedicated to trade and market disruption in Rwanda. As Dr. Butake said, I'm Claude Bizimana. I'm the Chief Executive Officer of the National Agricultural Export Development Board of Rwanda, and I consider myself as a member of the Academia 2063 family, and I'm joining this meeting from Kigali, Rwanda. So why such a webinar series? For those who are probably connecting for the first time, as you know, there is an ongoing war between Russia and Ukraine. And from rising fuel and food prices to inflation and supply chain disruption, this war has had impacts on African economies and food systems, with implications varying from country to another, from rural to urban areas, or across various commodity sectors. So with questions like, what are the impacts of these conflicts on African economies when we know that Russia and Ukraine are major global players in several agriculture and food systems and food markets? Or if we ask ourselves, how has the Russia-Ukraine crisis affected the food and commodity supply chain? Or else, how are these crises affected different countries on the continent with ramifications from food systems, food security, equity, growth, employment, and poverty? So in response to these kind of questions, we are asking ourselves, Academia 2063 developed the Ukraine Crisis Brief Series, which is a comprehensive research series that analyzes the economic and socioeconomic impacts of global markets disruptions induced by this conflict. These research findings are published on Academia 2063's Ukraine Crisis portal. These brief series are also disseminated through webinars like this one, which discuss policy options for Africa response to this conflict, with in-depth analysis of the policy implications. So webinar series also facilitate knowledge sharing, knowledge exchange towards contributing to policy actions for better preparedness against crisis-induced shocks across the continent. Today's webinar is on trade and market disruption in Rwanda. We are looking at impact on growth, food security, and poverty in Rwanda. And the presenter for this webinar is Dr. Ismail Fofana. If I can introduce him quickly, Dr. Fofana is the director of the Department of Capacity and Development at Academia 2063. He holds a PhD in economics from the University of Paris 1, Sorbonne. He conducts research, provides technical support, and contributes to strengthen capacity to improve economic development policies in Africa. His work focuses on food macro policies, gender economic inequality, and poverty reduction. Dr. Fofana worked for the International Food Policy Research Institute, IFPRI in Washington, D.C., from 2010 to 2020, and the Partnership for Economic Policy, PEP in short, at Laval University in Canada from 2003 to 2010. He established and expanded activities of the African Office of PEP in Dakar, Senegal, and assisted in the overall management of the network as Director for Africa from 2005 to 2007. He headed the IFPRI West and Central Africa office in Dakar, Senegal, from 2014 to 2017, and coordinated the network component of African Growth and Development Policy, AGRODEP in short, Modeling Consortium. Over the last decade, Dr. Fofana has coordinated the deployment of AGRODEP members and research support, and contributed to provide technical assistance to and strengthen the capacity of African Union member states to domesticate the African Union's Comprehensive Africa Agriculture Development Program called CADAP. I also have to add that I have the privilege of knowing Dr. Ismail in person. Without further ado, let me give the floor to Dr. Ismail Fofana. Please, the floor is yours.
All right, thank you, Claude. Thank you for having me. It's always a pleasure being with you and sharing with you some insight of the studies, the analysis that we are carrying out, we are conducting for these specific issues, but also this has started some time ago with the COVID pandemic. But today I'm going to talk about the impact of the Russia-Ukraine war on African economies, and the focus will be today on Rwanda and how growth, employment, food security, and poverty has been affected for Rwanda. So as Claude said, I work for Academia 2063 as a director for capacity and deployment, and I'm based in Dakar, Senegal, and today I'm joining you from Nairobi, Kenya. Let me share my screen. Let me know if you can see my screen. I don't think you can see it now, but let me share my screen here. All right. Okay, so I guess you can see my screen by now. Claude, can you confirm that you can see my screen?
We can.
Presentation.
Yes,
please.
See it? Yes.
All right. Thank you.
Ahead.
Yeah, thank you. So I'll be talking about this issue and organize my speech in these 7 points. I'll start with discussing quickly how the global commodity prices have changed with the Ukraine war. Then I'll talk about how Rwanda economy exposed to the global trade, and especially also to the countries that are affected, or countries that are fighting, Russia and Ukraine. I'm talking about here. Then I'll talk about the terms of trade shock, how Rwanda's terms of trade is affected by the war. And then I'll quickly discuss the analytical framework that we have used and the simulation scenario that was set. And then I will talk about the results, and finally I will conclude my presentation. So let me start by saying that the Russia-Ukraine war has substantially contributed to increase the global prices of primary commodities. You can, if you look at here in red, prices has started to recover from the COVID-19 pandemic, with stabilizing, with little changes, increase and decrease, but really around not that much, except for a few commodities like potassium chloride that we're seeing here increasing significantly, and also a little bit iron. But apart from those few commodities, prices were really stabilizing before the onset of the Russia and Ukraine war. These are the prices that was projected for 2022 in October 2021, meaning that before the start of the crisis. And then you can see in black bars the prediction, or let's say prediction of price for 2022 in October 2022, so a year later. So you can see that prices has significantly increased, especially if you look at fuel on my left-hand side. Fuel prices have increased significantly, fertilizer also on my right-hand side, and also for food prices, a couple of food prices also have increased. Barley is one of them. You can see also that chicken meat prices have increased, oranges, wheat prices have increased, but also vegetable oils like groundnut oil prices have increased significantly. Also, you can see that coffee prices also have increased, and tea prices in some extent. But Rwanda is not trading all these commodities at the same time. So basically, Rwanda's economy will be affected based on the trade structure of the economy. So what the country is importing and what the country is exporting. And here, this is the information that we gather in 2020, the structure of import and export of Rwanda. So let's say export and import. So on the top table is the export commodities, the top exported commodities for Rwanda. And here the focus is on primary commodities. So you can see that primary commodities weigh heavily on the export basket of Rwanda. These 4 commodities contribute around 85% of the export revenue, contributed for 85% of the export revenues in 2020. So minerals, gold is the one that is dominating the export basket, but also we have coffee and tea, which also has a good share of exports, contributed to the export revenue, around 30%. If you look at the tables at the bottom, there primary commodities are a little bit their contribution on the import is less important than as for the export side, but still we have commodities like iron, fish, sugar that contribute more. But also we have wheat, petroleum, and fertilizer that the country also import. So in terms of price changes, so basically the minerals that Rwanda is exporting, prices have not changed that much before and after the onset of the crisis. The one that has been significantly affected is the prices of coffee and tea. All right, so we can see that the prices of these two commodities has increased significantly, and these two commodities contribute around 14% of export revenue. On the other hand, if you look at on the import side, also those commodities are contributing heavily. The first three commodities, iron, fish, and sugar, the prices also, I mean, the prices have not changed that much. The trend is in declining prices for them. But we can see that wheat, petroleum, and fertilizer prices have increased significantly. These three commodities contributed roughly around 3% in 2022, in 2020 import of a country. So here one will expect that we may have some price increases for the imports and also price increases for export because of this, the double-digit increase that we are observing here for these prices. We'll come back to that. But when you look at on the import side, the three commodities that we're talking about, wheat, petroleum, and fertilizer, how Rwanda is exposed to the global market. Yes, basically Rwanda is exporting almost, the local consumption or the domestic consumption for these commodities is 100% satisfied by the global market. So you can see here for the import penetration rate, which measure the ratio, which is the ratio of import to consumption, is around 100%. So Rwanda depends on the global market for these commodities. Now, even if wheat, you have some little production of wheat in the country, but it's Rwanda depends on the global market, and the direct dependency to Russia and Ukraine, we observe it for wheat and for fertilizer. So we can see that between 2011 and 2020, Rwanda imported around 13% in average of the fertilizer need from these two countries while fighting. And for wheat, it's around 44%, which is relatively important. All right. One thing that need to be mentioned here, if you look at wheat here, penetration rate is more than 100%, meaning that Rwanda is importing more than what the country needs in terms of consumption. So the question is what the country is doing with the extra import of wheat. The extra import of wheat is exported to neighboring countries, and DRC is the main regional market for wheat that Rwanda is exporting. So now talking about the terms of trade, so we've seen that prices of import Rwanda commodities that Rwanda is importing and commodities that Rwanda is also exporting have been changing. So when you compute the average prices, export prices and average import prices, that's what we call here export price index and import price index. So you can see for 2022 that the average import prices have increased more than the average export prices. So here we have a deterioration of the terms of trade for the country. In 2023, prices are declining. And here also we observe that export prices are declining more than import prices. You still have a deterioration of the terms of trade. And then in 2024, we almost have a kind of balanced situation between the two price indexes. In terms of analytical framework, basically we implemented, we analyzed the impact on the economy and also the impact on the livelihood, 3 different steps. So we started with the simulation tools or models that are available at Academia 2063, which is a single country CG models and also the micro simulation models. These models are available for around 40 countries across Africa. So whenever there's need to do this type of analysis, so we tap into this database that is, that's toolbox, the models and the database that is available within Academia 2063. But you need to update the models. So basically you need to customize it to the issues that we're talking about. And also you need to update the data set. So step 2, that's what we did. We update the simulation models. So to update the simulation models, so we rely on the World Development Indicator database, where we have the structure of the economy in terms of contribution of agriculture, industry, manufacturing, services, and also you have other macroeconomic structure or variables that are available there. So you make sure that you have the latest structure of the economy of the country of Rwanda in our case here. So that you can implement your simulation to make sure that you have the latest figures or the latest structure of the economy before you implement your simulation. You also, as we are dealing with the trade and external shocks through import and export, we also updated the import and export structure of the economy. Here we use the African Agriculture Trade Monitoring Database, which is maintained by Academia 2063 and IFPRI. And then the third step is we build the simulation scenario. So basically the simulation scenarios are based on the primary commodity price database. This database is coming from the World Bank. So the World Bank is releasing twice a year in April and October the commodity market outlook. So this commodity market outlook provide annual price predictions for 46 primary commodities, and then these are the price prediction that the first figures that I displayed. Basically it's around those 46 primary commodities. So those commodities prices are also combined with the World Economic Outlook that is released also by the International Monetary Fund twice a year, April and October also. This is another information that we use to build the simulation scenario. So let me talk about a little bit more about this simulation scenario. Basically, we have 2 simulation scenarios that we built here and implement through the model. The first one is the baseline simulation scenario. So the baseline simulation scenario is the one that assume that there is no Russia and Ukraine war. So basically here we use the informations before the onset of the war. So October 2021, economic outlook for Rwanda. So what is the growth and macroeconomic projection for Rwanda before the onset of the war, but also what was the projection for the different commodities, primary commodities before the onset of the war. So basically for the next 3 years, for 2022, 2023, and 2024. So we assume that's our baseline scenario. So that baseline scenario already factor in the recovery process that the country was going through after the COVID pandemic. Then the Ukraine scenario is the scenario with the disruptions coming from the war. I mean, the disruption that has been created by the war. And here, that disruption affects the global commodity markets. So prices have changed, we've seen. So that information now is coming from the October 2022 outlook. All right, so a year later on, prices have changed. We've seen the prediction also for 2023 and 2024 are very different from the prediction that we had for in October 2021 before the war. So basically, that's our Ukraine scenario in terms of price shocks. So we are only accounting for one channel of transmission, is how the primary commodity price shocks are affecting the economy, right? Many other things are happening at the same time, but here we're isolating one channel that is affecting Rwanda's economy, and we're looking at now what is the economic outcomes, and also we're looking at how this is affecting the livelihood of people. So let me presenting. Let me present the result, starting with the external trade effects. Yes, what is expecting here is export, because export prices, as export prices are increasing, import prices are increasing. So we expect that import will be more expensive. Then we will import less. All right, but basically we import less because the terms of trade has deteriorated. So basically the terms of trade measure the relative prices of exports to imports. So it gives you the information on whether you are, you can afford the import bills. All right, if your exports revenue, is enough to basically help you to import. So if your export revenue decline, so basically you don't have enough foreign currency to import. So basically that's what happened. So here we observe that in 2022 that exports are declining by 4.6%. And then the question is why? We're observing that export prices are increasing. All right.
Ishmael?
So normally the country, yes.
You have 2 more minutes to go.
Yeah, I'm almost done. Export prices are increasing, so one will expect that the country will also seize the opportunity and export more. But think about that, also have the inflationary effects, that is also affecting the country. So inputs and all the consumption items are becoming more expensive. So you're having that negative impact on the economy. So also affecting the supply. That's why exports are declining here. And that's imports, then you'll import less. You expect also to have import also declining, also almost the same magnitude here. But because of the shocks that you're also observing domestically, so basically substitution is taking place. Some import products are still increasing to substitute with the domestic supply, negative domestic supply that you're having. And then you have in 2023, what is expecting is you have the decline of export and import also same magnitude, and then you start having a recovery in 2024. What is the economic growth effect we're having here? Basically, this will be affecting Rwanda's economy. So basically, we have a decline in the GDP growth rate for Rwanda, comparing the two scenarios. Before the war, Rwanda was set to have around 6% growth rate annually for the next three years. But these specific channels will cut the growth rate by half. So you see the decline in 2022 and 2023. What is important is you have a decline in the GDP, the level of GDP, and that decline of the level of GDP will set the country to a lower growth trajectory. You can see in the lower figures here that GDP declined in 2022, and in 2023, even if you have a growth in 2024, but you're already at the lower growth trajectory. And what the country is losing is almost 14% of GDP in 2021. So because of the crisis, the country will be losing 14% of the equivalent of the 2021 GDP. Same thing for employment. Employment also is also declining for the next 3 period. And also because of a lower growth trajectory, you have a lower growth also trajectory for employment. And also the level of employment that you're supposed to have without the war, you're 15% lower. Let's say it's 2.4% lower in 2022. So that's really the gap, what you're losing between what you were supposed to have under the baseline scenario and what you're having with the war. And in 2023, the employment level is 4.5% gap between the two and 7.1%. Overall, for the 3 years, the country is losing 15% employment equivalent, 2021 equivalent employment level, all right, for the 3 years. And quickly, in terms of income, basically what we have observed is there's income for rural areas is increasing during the first years because of, we've seen that the price of tea and coffee are increasing, while income for the urban areas is declining. But we've seen that the general inflationary pressure for all products, but also for the food product. Food prices are increasing more than non-food prices here. And this will have a negative impact on the food security if we consider the availability domain and also the accessibility domain. So basically the food consumption will be declining, and this will decline more for urban households compared to rural households because of the positive income effect that the rural households is having. This has an impact on poverty. What we've observed is poverty will be increasing, whatever poverty line that we use, national food poverty line or international poverty line. So poverty will be increasing, and you can see the number of additional, when you compare the baseline, how many people were set to get to be lifted out of poverty, and now with the Ukraine war, those people, that opportunity is lost. So you'll have around 350,000 people, between 370,000 and 210,000 people will not be lifted out of poverty because of what the Ukraine war, Russia-Ukraine war has created. Inequality will be declining. As we've seen, prices, you have positive or favorable prices for tea and coffee is impacting positively the rural areas, and that will contribute to reduce income inequality in the country. In conclusion, basically, all the figures that I have presented are the impact of the shock without government response. We know that Rwanda's government has responded, has taken actions in order to mitigate the impact or seize the opportunity that this the war brings. All right, one of the policy response is the government response to the global fertilizer trade market disruption. So government has subsidized, fertilizer. You can see here for the different seasons, fertilizer prices will subsidize around 33% to 40, 42 or 50%, depending on the type of fertilizer. So this is one of the response. So the results that has been presented did not include the government response. It's without without the government response here. But the good news is, looking at now the GDP growth estimate and projection for Rwanda, so this month has the growth rate for Rwanda is 6.8%, 6.2%, and 7.5% for 2022, 2023, and 2024. which is a very good news. It's even higher than what was predicted before the war, meaning that, the government actions to mitigate or to reverse the course of things, due to Ukraine war has bear fruit. So it has been successful. Otherwise, you won't have this effect. But think about that also. There are so many things that are happening at the same time. Government has its own policies that also is impacting the economy, and you also have all the different channels. And also have the policy response to the Ukraine war. But the good news is, you have a higher growth rate for Rwanda. Thank you very much, Claude, and I'll yield to you.
Yes, thank you very much. I could listen to you hours and hours, but since we have an hour for this webinar, and to be fair with at least people participating in the seminar, I'll be opening up questions. You've used already. Actually, we've used 35 minutes out of an hour that was dedicated to this. So I'll be opening up questions for, let me say, 20 minutes. So we have two ways. Whoever wants to ask a question would raise his or her hand. Or alternatively, for those who really want to engage probably at a later stage, the presenter could always send in their questions using the chat box that is available for you. Otherwise, Ishmael, what you presented actually somehow shows the reality on the ground, not only in Rwanda, but also in other African countries. When you talk about the increase in international commodity prices, we see related impacts in the African economy, especially in Rwanda, when it comes to substantial increase in energy, transport, and food prices, and that is really seen in the country. What I also liked was also the analysis on the impact it has had on fertilizers and how the government has responded into that. So probably my question to open up the discussions, have you been able to do a cross-country analysis, see what has happened in Africa and responses that you've given us from Rwanda? Have you been able to at least do an analysis? What were the responses from different governments, countries across the continent? Do we see any similarity? Do we see any kind of divergence in terms of solutions to this process? Otherwise, I'll pick up questions if you raise your hand, or if you send your questions through the chat box. Over to you, Ishmael.
Yeah, thank you, Claude. I think that's a good point. Basically, yes, we did the cross-country analysis to look at the impact, and now the work that we are doing is to further analyze the policy responses now. All right. So basically, we did the analysis in about 16 countries across Africa, from west to east, north to south, etc. And then the impact is really different from one country to another, depending on what you trade with the international market and how the prices have been affected. So the terms of trade are positive for some countries like Nigeria, Guinea, etc. Oil, and all the product that these countries are exporting because of that. For many other countries, the terms of trade is negative, or like Rwanda. Then basically countries will respond differently according to the way they are affected. A country like Mozambique, the terms of trade is positive. The country has a positive impact, GDP impact, but when you look at poverty is negative. All right, because of the growth is not that inclusive. Those sectors who are driving the positive terms of trade are not really distributing wealth. It's mostly mineral sector, and that mineral sector is not inward, but mostly outward, kind of sector, meaning that, the growth there is not well distributed. We've seen in a country like Benin, where it's most cotton that is driving the positive terms of trade. And cotton is more inclusive, it's more, you have smallholders who are involved in that value chains, are benefiting from, the income that is generated through that value chain. Then you have a positive growth and positive poverty impact. But now what we have not done and we're doing right now is look at how different countries have responded in terms of policy, how do you call it, a policy response to the Ukraine crisis, and to see, whether it is one size fits all or it should be different from one country to another. For instance, fertilizer, subsidizing fertilizer. Should everybody fertilize fertilizer, or is it depend on the structure of the country? There are some countries is like Rwanda, Cote d'Ivoire. It's cash crop that is more use fertilizer, and if we subsidize those cash crops, etc., what is the impact? Some countries like Tunisia, etc., is staple crops. You have wheat there that is produced and use a lot of fertilizer. Like Malawi, you have maize, which is more staple crop, use fertilizer. If you subsidize, so you have a different impact. So this is the kind of analysis that we want to do now, but we haven't gone through it in deep to be able to explain, how different is the policy responses in different countries. Thank you. Back to you.
Yes, thank you very much, Ismail. And while waiting for questions in the chat box, I want to pick up your mind on another element. You've basically grouped commodities, whether agriculture or non-agriculture. What could be the difference if you are to separate the two?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, agriculture and non-agriculture. Basically, if you have to separate the two, they will have different impact on food security. All right. So if we look at the food security angle, okay, even growth, I talk about growth, but let's discuss the food security angle. One will impact, the impact is only on one dimension of food security, like accessibility. So let's think about the non-agriculture commodities. You have a positive impact on that. So basically, that will affect your income. That income will help, will be, will support or will be helpful to gain access to food items. But when we talk about agriculture products, agri-food product, you have those two dimensions that are affected. Basically, you generate income through, selling or producing and selling it. But at the same time, on the other hand, it's also you have the, how do you call it, the price. You have the price effect. All right. So if the prices are high, so that also have an impact on the accessibility. So you have the supply, the availability, and the accessibility also affects that is playing at that level. So that's the reason why I think it's important to differentiate between the two, and also have a further analysis on how it's affecting food security. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, Ismail. I'll take a round of 5 questions, starting with Antoinette Salah, then Julie Collins, then who else? Actually, I have 3 questions.
It's me.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. I will start with Antoinette, please. Antoinette?
Hi, thank you. Thank you, Claude. Thank you, Ismail, for the presentation. This is Julie Collins from Academia 2063. It's very interesting I wanted to ask a little bit more about, hello? I wanted to ask a little bit more about the fact that we see increases in poverty, but also a decrease in income inequality. That was very interesting. I just wanted to ask if you can say a little bit more about that. Do we have some positive impacts on certain groups, or do we see every group having negative impacts, but some are less negative than others? Thank you.
Okay, that is well taken. Do you want me to take more questions and then I answer, Claude?
Yeah, yes, please. Yes, please. I don't know whether Antoinette has access to the mic.
Yes, she does.
Yeah.
I can see her hand is still raised.
Yes,
Her mic
yes.
is open.
So, Lai, go ahead for the
Okay.
sake of time.
All right. Thank you, Claude. Ismail, I would just like for you to elaborate a little bit on one of the findings from brief 23, which states that income growth is projected to slow down in urban areas due to employment declines. And then on the other hand, we can see that incomes in rural areas are projected to increase because of higher export prices of the main exported agricultural commodities. So I would like for you to elaborate on that a little bit. Thank you.
Ismail, go ahead.
Yeah, all right. Thank you, Julie and Lai. On the poverty and inequality one, so think about that. They are all ultimately impacted negatively, whether it is urban and rural households. All right, but in relative term, rural are better off or are less affected negatively than urban. All right, the reason why, because they have a positive income effect. All right, tea, the price of tea and coffee has increased with the war. So basically, that is providing positive extra income to rural households compared to urban. All right, so basically, that is reducing inequality. But that income increase is not enough to compensate for the inflationary effect that they are experiencing. So price increase is much higher than income increase. That's why you have a negative impact, and that's why you have poverty is increasing. So poverty is increasing both in urban and rural, but it's increasing more in urban area than rural area. All right. So, and then you have that relative effect that is also, when comparing the two, you see that, inequality is declining. I hope that, I answered your question. Also, that will bring me to the question of Lai. Yes, basically, because of coffee and tea, there are a lot of, households, producers and households in rural area depends on that activity, and that activity is positively impacted by the prices is increasing. On the one hand, you have the product price or the output price is increasing, which is good for producers. They get remunerated, higher remuneration for their product. But on the other hand, input prices are increasing also, like fertilizer, energy, etc. All right, and that also have a negative impact. But overall, we've seen that the positive output prices increase of output prices is compensating for the loss on the input side. That's for the 2022, but you see that in 2023 things are, the increase, the income increase that rural household enjoying eroded, quickly in 2023 because of that, negative impact they are getting from high inflationary pressure. And then you'll see in 2024 that the prices is declining, their income is declining because of, that's high inflationary pressure is building up over time, and then is now, is now creating a situation. But at the same time, those output prices that they were enjoying is also declining a little bit. It's still high for 2022 and 2023, but it's declining. You don't have the same phenomena happening in the urban area. On the urban area, they rely more on non-ag activities, and non-ag agriculture activities are more affected by the inflationary effect. Input are becoming more expensive, because of higher oil prices, basically, and other prices are increasing. So basically, the input prices are reducing, their margins, and that is having a negative impact on employment and on income distribution. Thank you. Back to you.
Thank you, Ismail. Probably after this, I want to follow up on probably some other factors that could explain, apart from what you've analyzed, what other factors could explain somehow the reduction in income inequality. And that probably will depend from a country to another. I had someone called Antoinette. I see her hand is still up, if she wants to intervene at this particular time. Otherwise, we have Didas.
Hello.
Yes, please.
Yeah,
go ahead.
thank you. Thank you, CEO, and many thanks to Ismail for the good presentation and the research findings. And it is more clear. I have one question. If I understood very well, he said that the finding does not include the government subsidy, especially on fertilizer. So I would be happy to see if that subsidy have more impact on these research findings. I mean, what if we consider that subsidy section? I think maybe the result could be somehow differ from what we have, and it can show us more about it, if I understood very well. So another one question related to that one, Ismail, we faced different challenges, for example, the Russia and Ukraine war, and the COVID, and even the climate change. How could you, in this study, conclude that this high price increase is related to Russia and Ukraine, while we are facing, for example, the climate change? Yeah, over to you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yes, Ismail, thank you. And there was a question also in the chat box, but I guess this could probably be discussed at a later stage. And it comes from a colleague from Academia 2063, stating that we are starting to see decrease in prices, whether fertilizer prices or even fuel prices. So is it any indication to this? Can you relate that to your simulation, the analysis that you've made?
Yeah, all right. So let me start with that. Yes, we are seeing prices to decrease slowly, but that decrease that does not compensate for the increase that we have seen in 2022. So prices are still high. All right, and it is predicted that prices will remain high for the next at least couple of years. All right, we have a 76% increase in energy prices, and we're seeing 2.5% or 10% decrease. That 10% decrease will not compensate for 76% increase that we experienced, last year. So prices are still high. When you compare the level of prices to 2021, the level is still high. All right, we're still at 50%, 60%, 70% compared to 2021. All right. So basically, and then we'll be still continuing, having the inflationary effects for a couple of for the next 2-3 years. Coming back now to the question of yes, how to attribute these effects impact on Ukraine crisis only while we are facing many challenges at the same time. So basically, it's the scenario, the way the scenario were built. So basically, the climate shocks and other shocks, long term, let's say, that are still factor in this. So basically, the 2021 scenario that we projected for the next 3 years, 2022, 2023, and 2024, still include the effect of climate shocks. All right. So basically, the major disruption that we have gone through since last year is the Ukraine war. Climate shocks is still happening. Climate shocks were there before the Ukraine war, and is still there with the Ukraine war. Between the two, we haven't seen any major disruption in terms of climate shocks. So the climate shocks that you have in 2021, the point I'm trying to make, the climate shock that we have been facing through, the years, and in 2021, in 2022, 3, and 4, we're still going to have those climate shock, but it won't be a major disruption, major changes happening. I don't think so. We have seen something major happening, especially for Rwanda. Probably for another country, we can still discuss it, whether there has been a major climate issues, happening between the 2 years or the 3 years, etc. So basically, yes. So basically, as far as we don't have that major changes, happening, so we can only attribute it as the way prices, changing prices. But let me state it differently, all right? Because we're talking about global commodities, global market disruption, global market, all right? So let's put it at the global level, because that's a channel of our entry point. Our entry point, how prices have changed globally, all right? So basically, the point I'm trying to make now is, since 2021, for 2022 and 2023, have we observed a major disruption of the climate that was not seen or foreseen in 2021 and before? I don't think so. So the major disruption that we have gone through as a global, globally, for the global economy, is what's happened in Russia, in Ukraine, the Russia-Ukraine war. So that's why we attribute, that's disruptions, or that's the price changes that you're observing to the Russia
Thank you.
Russia and Ukraine crisis. Yeah, and you've seen that what I presented, that prices was starting to stabilize. The recovery was already there from the pandemic. So the pandemic is almost, we almost started to recover from the pandemic. So there was pandemic, the COVID-19 pandemic, it was no more a major threat, to the global trade and global market. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ismail. I was going to end this Q&A session here, but there is an interesting question that I've just received. Read up, and I'll give you just 1 second to react to that. Anonymous attendee says, quels sont les défis que vous avez eus durant votre recherche du point de vue de collecte de données et vérification des informations de différentes sources? Just quickly. Any challenge in terms of data collection, but also getting information from different sources?
That's a good point. For Rwanda, yes, it's still getting a new data, etc. Especially updating the economy is still getting the right data to update the economy is a challenge. For instance, we have been able to update the macro structure of the economy, but the sectoral structure we have not been able. For instance, if the fertilizer use have changed across the ag sector over the last few years, so that's one we may have not been able to capture it, all right, because the fertilizer use that we have in the economy is is a little bit 3 years old, and we assume that there's no major changes that have happened in terms of fertilizer, sectoral use of fertilizer in the Rwanda's economy. So those are some of the challenges that we face. We don't have that data to update it. We have data to update the trade. Even trade data also is a challenge because, the trade figures that I was talking about was 2020. All right. So we're not talking about 2022. All right. Or 2021 at least, but 1 year gap, that's not a big deal. So if the Rwanda economy structure of the trade have changed significantly between 2020 and 2021, and then that should have been a serious issue, but I don't think so if that has happened. Yeah, those are the kind of things.
Right on time. This is 4 p.m. in Kigali time, and that's the end of this webinar series that was dedicated to trade and market disruption, impact on growth, food security, and poverty reduction in Rwanda. So thank you very much, Dr. Ismail Fofana. And I was told by Dr. Lai Butake that there was a link to this presentation that was shared to all attendees. So read through. I know Ismail is still around. This is just an hour for getting in touch and discussing further about this. But him and obviously Academia 2063 remain available for any question that may arise even after this session. So thank you very much. It was my pleasure to moderate this session, and back to you, Dr. Butake.
Wow, what an exciting conversation. Thank you so much, Mr. Bizimana, CEO NAEP, for agreeing to moderate this session. We enjoyed your company, and we hope to have you for our future events. And thank you to Dr. Ismail Fofana. I've lost track of how many presentations you have made during this series. Thank you for always showing up for us. Thank you so much for your contributions to the Ukraine Crisis webinar series. So as Mr. Bizimana said, all the PowerPoint presentations from Academia 2063's Ukraine Crisis webinar series are available on SlideShare. Please go to the chat to see the link. If you click on that link, it will take you to our SlideShare account and you'll be able to see all the presentations from this series. As I mentioned at the beginning of the session, so far we have published 30 Ukraine Crisis briefs on academia2063.org. Please head to our website and take a look at them. And we will be taking a break from the Ukraine Crisis webinar series after 17 sessions. We'll be taking a short break, but not goodbye. We'll be back in June with another series of presentations. So thank you all for those who have been here with us from the beginning since November last year when we launched this webinar series. You have been here with us weekly since November last year. So we're very happy to have you here, and we will be keeping you updated of the next sessions. In the meantime, enjoy the 30 briefs, go to SlideShare, look at the presentations, and let's stay in touch. Thank you so much. Take care. See you soon.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.